Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I have the fine fortune today to be sitting in with one of our esteemed professors here and the Director of General Education, Professor Jared Rife. Jared, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the podcast.
It is wonderful to be back here with you, Paul. Happy to be here.
Well, we are today talking about one of the things that is near and dear to both of our hearts here at Central Penn College, the CPC Film Series. That'll be coming up on January 24th at 6:30 for Blackkklansman, a Spike Lee joint, as Spike Lee so eminently professes for each of his films. So we want to talk a little bit more about the film series in general, and then we'll get to this film particularly here in just a few minutes. This year, I would say that, and I mentioned this to you prior to going on there, I'd hesitate to say that we're going in a different direction per se, but I think that the film series, as it's going to be continuing here at the college, is going to try to center around some different things that happen on a yearly calendar. We're still going to plan on doing this quarterly, which is something that we had conversations about, but really what this first particular film, Blackkklansman, is sort of a prelude to Black History Month in February. So again, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But Jared, what would you say when we were having these conversations without, pulling down the curtain and the fourth wall too far? What would you say was some of the thought processes here with trying to figure out this semi-new direction for the film series?
I think from its inception, the film series was meant to be an opportunity for films to be both viewed and discussed in the campus community and at the community at large. And so I think this new kind of added benefit to what we're trying to do here is we're trying to theme them a little bit more so we can continue to enlist the help, enlist the participation of the community that we have around the college. And it kind of follows the direction, I think, of allowing the college to be a little more visible, allowing the college to be a place where people are coming to get information, and allowing a place for the communities to see us for what we are, this wonderful hidden gem right here, and allow that to be explored and expressed.
I love the fact that I had the opportunity to do this, and hopefully in the future I'm not going to spoil anything just yet, but I might be able to do this again. This was something that really meant a lot to me personally. The fact that I was able to invite friends and family, and certainly students, and certainly community members when I presented The Big Lebowski a couple of years ago. But professionally, it meant the world to me because I've definitely taken opportunities here to do things that are more campus-wide, and this was something that was just so much fun for me because I just love the film that much. I know that when we had you on before, when you kicked off the film series with Jaws, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but can you just maybe refresh the memories of some of our listeners? What was it about film that got you so intrigued to begin with?
Film has always been just an incredible medium. I think television has those short segments. Television is interrupted by commercials. It has its place. I mean, obviously, streaming services have altered that in the last few years. But movies, in just the way that they are set up, going to a theater, having the lights go dim, having this kind of personal one-on-one experience with what's going on the screen, and you really sucks you in. I mean, how often have I left a movie theater, or even a movie in my own home, and I'm like, oh, it's dark outside now, or I didn't realize it was as late as it was, because I have been transported, because I have been brought in to this film, and good films do that. And so I think that, for one thing, is that what I really love about film, and the other thing is that we watched movies growing up. As we talked about before, my mother was as a kind of a bystander, but it was involved around a lot of people who made movies, who were involved in the movie production process. And so she always kind of saw the back end of it and always kind of shared that with us and said, oh, this is how they do this, or this is how they approach this, or this is where they kind of go with that. And so it really allowed me to kind of see it not just as an entertainment piece, not just as something as a vehicle for communication or trying to get a point across, but as this very huge experience that takes in so many people, both in front and behind the camera from start to finish.
One thing that I'm really looking forward to is as I've shared on the podcast, I've recently begun to embark on my PhD program, And one of the main reasons that I chose this particular program is they have a focus on production. Pre-production, production itself, and then post-production are three of our core classes. And I'm actually going into the pre-production class here in just a few weeks. Actually, unfortunately, my first class actually will be while you are giving your presentation on January 24th. So I'm really looking forward to that because I've done, we had a film production class when I was in my undergrad, but I've honestly studied film in a variety of ways. I've taken numerous film classes and just always really enjoyed it. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about what goes into the entire production from start to finish. I think that's something that I'm looking forward to. So hopefully down the line, I'll be able to bring some of that information and some of those skills back to the college, as you know, hopefully to use them with our sports programs, the broadcasts that we're doing there. So the film series, let's talk about this. So we are going into year 3, and this is something that as not only, so it initially started as the Humanities Film Series, but we really didn't want to continue using that moniker because it was important to us to get other people from around the campus involved. One thing that I really am looking forward to announce, we don't really have a whole lot of information at this point, but Leslie Heimbaugh is our nightly news reporter, covers the film series, had approached me last term before we'd gotten together to decide the movies, and had asked, would you ever consider a student giving a presentation? And we all agreed as the committee that this would be a good idea. So what does this mean to you that, later on in the year we're going to have a student present on a film that she is yet to choose?
No, I think this is this evolution of what the series is supposed to be and meant to be. That it allows people to bring in their experience, their voices, to pick a film that is meaningful to them or carries some sort of significance to what's going on or an event in history or whatever it might be, and they share that. I mean, that really is where this next maybe version of the film series needs to continue to kind of grow and develop as we bring people in, not just here at the college, not just students, but also people outside of the community. And so that will happen further down the road, I hope, as the film series continues to grow and develop. But to me, I think it's lovely, and Leslie's wonderful. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she picks and being at the presentation in the film and having those discussions and having that interaction because we all kind of believe for it and we benefit. So really, it's kind of a twofold. You get to see, this wonderful film. You get to have whatever it is that you take from it, but then you also get to have this interaction with your peers, with the academy, with whoever's presenting it, and gives us an extra little bit to how we can do it and how we can feel and how we can really progress throughout it.
As we look back, so 2 years in the books, 8 different films that we've looked at, 8 different presenters. You will be the first that will be presenting on a second time. But I want to look back, what were some of the most memorable, not even just necessarily individual moments, but what are some of the most memorable aspects of this in its first 2 years of existence?
Well, I think that first night when we did it, when we kind of first presented, we had no idea what kind of turnout we would get. We had no idea how it would be received, and we had a good-sized audience, and there were people from the community, there were people here on campus, faculty and staff. That to me was just saying that yes, I think we're doing the right thing. This is something that the campus community needs. This is something that the college needs, and it's filling a role. I think if it had just shown up and it had just been, Dr. Ellsworth and one or two others would have thought, what, maybe this just isn't the time or maybe this just isn't right. But that continues to be something that I kind of marvel at, that whether it's, the most recent film or the films we're doing right now, that different people from different walks of life are coming and seeing this and participating in our college and in the campus. And that continues to be kind of really a benefit that I see and kind of, warms me and makes me think, yep, this continues to be needed, continues to thrive, and continues to fill a need in the community.
Well, certainly whenever we had these conversations, that was one of the most important things, is because we identify that, we've had anywhere from 25 to as many as 40 to 45 on different occasions. And then there are certainly things, over the summer, it's always tough. People are on vacation and whatnot. Sports are coming into, with people's children and whatnot. But we have constantly and steadily had at least, a minimum of 25 to 30 people, some students, faculty and staff, community members. So we're getting these people onto our campus. They're seeing what we are capable of, to your point. It is something that I believe that fills an important role in what we're doing here, because I think a lot of times students kind of just see us as, that we're knowledgeable in our field.
Sure.
And that maybe outside of that, maybe we don't necessarily have the knowledge on some of these things. So I think it's interesting and fun. It was fun for me to put together a presentation and to get to share The Big Lebowski with some of my friends and family and colleagues. And I'm sure that you felt the same, when you did Jaws. Let's bring it to Blackkklansman. This was a 2018 film from Spike Lee, someone who I've actually studied over the years in some of my film classes, and is known as a modern auteur.
Yep.
When we think about auteurs, what we're talking about is a particular director who has certain characteristics from their film that can be identifiable with Spike Lee. Now, I remember when we covered, this was in my grad class, so I started this in like 2005, so we're talking 15 years ago. One of the interesting things about Spike Lee was that Spike Lee always, maybe not 100% always, but most of the time, filmed his movies in New York City. And that I'll never forget, this was so poignant to me, and it's really kind of changed how I thought about film, made the case that New York City was in itself a character. Mm-hmm. And that the reason that they were in New York City and that just being in the city, that the city had a life of its own and a character of its own. And I always took something away from that. Now, this kind of goes in a different direction, because this actually takes place in Colorado Springs, Colorado, back in the 1970s. So I found that interesting. But let's start at the top. Why was this a film that spoke to you and stood out to you? Because there's a ton of films I like, Professor Rife. But I got to tell you, there's only a small handful of films I would consider doing a presentation such as this. So how'd you come up with this film?
First, I think you kind of hit it on the head a little bit with Spike Lee. Huge fan, and have studied him much like yourself, and see him and has this very unique style of both storytelling and how he questions and pushes and embraces sometimes in very violent ways with his audience. And so anytime that he is involved with things, I'm always willing to participate and always willing to kind of view it, and also really to kind of get into it. The second thing is that this is based on a true story. This is based on Ron Livingston's memoir that talks about him being in the police force in Colorado in the early 1970s as a lone African American, and kind of and they talk about it in the film as well, kind of a Jackie Robinson-like story where he's pushing against barriers. He's fighting a lot of both internal and external pressures of people who don't want him to be there and don't want him to participate. The third piece is as Spike Lee has continued in his career, he's developed the agility and probably at some level probably the money and the power too, to be able to speak to things that are very current and very real. His earlier films definitely spoke to kind of broader topics that are universal and are still felt. But this film, very much in particular, speaks to right now, just within the last year, of things that are going on, of rhetoric that's being used in the public sphere, of different political events. And so it really is what I enjoyed about it, and using it as kind of a prelude to February, which is Black History Month, is saying, okay, this is where we are right now, and then as we flow into February, we get to kind of look back and see what's happened and where we are in terms of Black history. So I like the juxtaposition of both of those things. There's so many, I think, fantastic messages that I'll talk about on the 24th that we get from this, both things that I think are very apparent, and then the things that are very much more subtle that kind of fit into that tour style, as you talk about it, very much the signature Spike Lee joint.
Well, I think you make a really interesting point here, is that even though this film is based on actual events that happened in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. There are certainly some parallels to some things that are going on in today's, nationwide culture, with some of the things that have happened and the divisiveness of the two different parties back and forth between one another, and even some of the hate that has occurred in our country over the last couple of years. So I think that's very interesting how yet it can be a historical perspective, but yet still speaks to things that are going on in the actual modern day, in current events that we see each and every day. So I think that that's a very important point. One thing I did want to note, and so it was based on a memoir, but I want to just kind of pause a bit, because I think a lot of times, and when I've taught film before, I think people are kind of get carried away with that based on a true story or based on actual events. And there actually are different levels of what you can actually call something, depending on the storyline. So how do you think that plays into this? Yes, it was based on actual events, but obviously Spike Lee is doing there's a lot here that was not on the original page. How do you think that plays into this?
Well, I think that goes back into his style, right, of how he confronts the audience. Spike Lee, especially in his films, we don't often kind of walk away feeling good or feeling resolved. More often than not, as we walk away from his films, we kind of just, what did we just go? What did I just learn? Where do I go from here? You kind of leave the film not knowing what to do or how to act. But that's that confrontational style that he enjoys. And so he takes, yes, this memoir and takes this time period and takes this individual, but then he adds into these other kind of elements, and parodies them. To really, in some ways, very over the top. In some ways, very kind of reminiscent of the blaxploitation films of the 60s and 70s and early 80s. That are they're silly and they're over the top. And you're really going to do that? You're really going to use a roundhouse kick and you're going to knock a guy out? No, not really. But he takes those elements and he adds them to it. And so we get there's a buddy cop storyline to this, right? And the buddy cop is it's almost its own genre at this point. If we don't get 3 buddy cop movies in a summer, it's been a disappointing summer, right? And so he takes this element. He takes these ideas of the blaxploitation films. He talks about obviously racism and all these things that are current in the 70s that are current now. He talks about the Ku Klux Klan and the kind of oafishness of them. And so he really in almost a simple way presents these themes, presents these ideas, but they don't quite mix together. They're kind of rough. It's not like a puzzle that's fitting perfectly. There's kind of these jagged edges, and you feel that as a viewer. You feel that as you're watching it, that this is not quite something that is smooth, but rather is rough, and that agitation forces you to do exactly what he's wanting you to do, which is to think and dialogue.
I have to tell you that I highly encourage, if you've not seen any Spike Lee films, that you go back. There's a couple that I'm a huge fan of. Obviously, Do the Right Thing is actually the film that we watched in my film class. So ever since then, I've been a big fan.
Oh yeah.
Some more recent films, and this is one thing I did want to bring up. Spike Lee keeps busy. If you go to his IMDb profile, he's got a directorial credit for 89 different things. However, many of them are video shorts, TV documentaries. He actually has directed She's Gotta Have It, a TV series that's been on from 17 to 19. He hasn't really done a whole lot of film in the last really decade and a half, going back to The Miracle at St. Anna back in 2008. I was a big fan of Inside Man back in 2006, then 25th Hour in 2002. But Spike really hasn't done a whole heck of a lot in the last few years. What do you have any sense of what it was about this film that spoke to him, that he went through with the production of this movie?
I think some of it was, I think he, coming out and being kind of this new wave of directors in the 80s, coming out of NYU's kind of these college-trained kind of superstars, I think he got a little tired in the mid-2000s. And he's talked about that he kind of felt like things were played out, that he kind of lost a little bit of, not necessarily his direction, but that the movie scene wasn't quite where he wanted to participate. So he does get involved in all these other projects, smaller things, as we view them. Although often when we say smaller, we think less important, but to him, they continue to have this great meaning. He got more involved in politics. And I think for him, especially during 2008, 2016, things at least seemed different politically. And so I think it changed a lot of how he reacted. And then after 2016, I think he again feels this call to be involved and to be active. And this is very much a political film. It is there's no dancing around it. He's not trying to subtly show it to you. I won't give too much away, but at the end of the film, he shows current events, current last several years. And so I think it kind of called him back into being in the sphere. And yeah, Do the Right Thing is one of my all-time favorites too, right? And this was something that, he comes out of and he's familiar with and talks about, again, the Bed-Stuy community, talks about New York as a character and all these things that are going on. And so I think it was where he was at personally and what he felt like he could do, because he did kind of go into these different things. Inside Man is a very different kind of a break from where he was.
And one of the best twist endings that you'll ever see.
Oh, yes.
I haven't watched that for a little while. I might have to break it back out. Well, one thing before we go, this is not a movie that is without high regard. Won the Oscar in 2019 for Best Adapted Screenplay and nominated for Motion Picture of the Year, Best Achievement in Directing, Supporting Actor with Adam Driver of Star Wars fame, and Best Achievement in Film Editing as well as Original Score. So not only were they nominated for 6 Oscars, they won Best Adapted Screenplay, which many people argue Best Adapted Screenplay is actually one of the most highly regarded awards, although it doesn't necessarily get the press that Best Actor or Best Director might get. So this is obviously a film that is very highly regarded in the film community. It did very well, almost got to the $100 million plateau on a $15 million budget, so an excellent return, and very, very highly regarded by fans and critics alike. So this is a film that not only, to your point, it absolutely looks at through a historical lens, looks at issues that we have going on in our country right now. Certainly a nice prelude to Black History Month, and really an excellent film for the future direction of the CPC Film Series. So I think that you picked a good film.
Oh, thank you.
Just as another reminder, please save the date for January 24th. That's a Friday evening. The presentation starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. The screening will begin just after that, about a 30 to 40-minute presentation. We'll also have some refreshments. It's a free event. You can't beat that. And Professor Rife, we just appreciate you spending some time here and chatting movies with us here on the Nightly News Podcast.
Always happy to do so. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's certainly not a problem. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We certainly hope to see you out on January 24th at the Capitol Blue Cross Theater for Blackkklansman with the CPC Film Series and Professor Rife. But until next time, for Professor Jared Rife, the Director of the General Education Department here at Central Penn College, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we will see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Brant Ellsworth, Assistant Professor of Humanities at Central Penn College. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we are here for a very special edition of the Nightly News Podcast, coming to you from the Nasir Harris Podcast Studio at the Boyer House at Central Penn College. We are here today with the new co-president of the Nightly News, Tyler Coleman. Tyler, this is kind of the first time we're really using that terminology. Our former president, Brian Christiana, has been president for about 1.5 years now, and maybe even a little bit longer. But Brian is in his final term, and based on where he is right now, he just completed his internship. He has some other job opportunities and is stepping down from that position. He's not stepping away from the club. We still have him for one more term, and we need to use him as best we can. But we're actually moving on to sort of a co-president model with Tyler Coleman and Christian Fulp. Tyler, let's first talk about, what does this honor mean to you, on the surface?
This honor means a lot to me. Considering that I'm only a part-time student, so I'm only here, so many times a week, just to be asked is great. It's a great opportunity for me.
Were you asked, or were you kind of just told?
Well, I was kind of told, but I mean, it's not something that I would turn down. I think it's, like I said, it's a great opportunity, something to put on a resume and let future employers know, hey, look, I got to be the vice president and maybe future president of the club, and I think it will show off leadership skills, and it's just a great opportunity to kind of help get my name out there.
I think you made a couple of important points here. First of all, you've said this before, and I apologize if I'm asking you to say this, for the fifth time. When you first started here, and I'll never forget, Tyler, we actually had a conversation. So you had gone to Hack previously and came over and to our comm program, and I remember, and you were mostly online. In fact, I don't think your first almost year here that you had ever taken an on-campus class. Can you just talk about how, when you did start taking some of these evening classes, how that maybe changed your perspective on not only just the college, but opportunities that are available for online and evening students that maybe they wouldn't think were available to them?
Yeah, I'll admit, when I first started taking classes here, I was nervous because being online, I didn't know anybody. I would come over here. For a while, I didn't even know where the classrooms were. So figuring all that out, pretty much made life here for me easier. So once I started coming over to the campus more, getting to meet people, getting involved with the Nightly News Club, and then being asked to be vice president, having the opportunities to broadcast the games, it's been fantastic just because these are opportunities that maybe if you go to a larger school, you don't get these opportunities. But because Central Penn is smaller and we're more confined and everybody knows each other here, it's, oh, hey, I know this guy, he might be online, but this guy would be great for, bringing over and helping broadcast games. So I appreciate the opportunities that I've been given, and I think they'll be very helpful for later on in life.
And I think that's really, to me, one of the most important things, Tyler, that you've brought to our club is, some of the student clubs, it's a little tougher to get the day students. Yes, we see them. Often our meetings are during the day. Often it's easier for them logistically. But you made it work, even though you were working full-time and still do, work a considerable amount of time, plus take classes, but you're also managed to get so engaged. And see, to me, that is often where online students may struggle. Maybe it's not in the classroom, but it's what else are you doing? Well, a lot of times online students are online because they work full-time, because they might not have the opportunity to come to our campus as frequently as possible. And I think that for you specifically, you mentioned the importance of this. And frankly, and I've disagree with me if you feel the need, but to be honest, I think that this is going to really change how you look back at your education, but you took advantage of these opportunities. I try to give opportunities to students all the time, but an opportunity, Tyler, is only an opportunity until you take advantage of it. When you take advantage of it, it becomes experience, right?
Yes.
So then you can put that on your resume, and your goal is to, the first time I talk to you, and I always try to talk to new students about what their goals are so I can try to figure out a way to get them involved in the nightly news just to get them some experience. And when you told me you wanted to get in sports, that was right about the time that we started doing baseball initially. And while you weren't necessarily involved our first season, by the time we got to last season and you were calling games, you called a handful of games last year. Now you're, number one anchor on our basketball. You were absolutely influential in our soccer broadcast with working the camera. And, we're looking forward to a great baseball season coming up as well. So you've definitely taken advantage of that. And it's fun. Like you said in a previous podcast, it's to be able to tell people that you are the play-by-play or color commentator for the Central Penn Knights baseball team, and that we're doing professional level stuff and it's available on YouTube. That's something that you'll be able to look back on for the rest of your life and put on your resume. So it's a good way to get your foot in the door. Obviously, I want to talk a little bit about you and Christian. So it was interesting kind of how this came to be. So former VP Dylan Kleintop graduated way back at the end of the summer term. And so we were kind of struggling to find what was going to work best. And what we decided was to recognize both you and Christian Fulp as sort of co-vice presidents. You're he's more of a traditional student, you're more of an online evening student, and we really just wanted some different perspectives in some of these meetings. What is your relationship with Christian? How's that helped you become a better leader within the club?
Christian and I have formed a very good relationship over the past several years, or I'm sorry, several months, maybe over to a year or so. He was somebody right away that I hit it off with just because of his personality and his character makeup. He's very easy to talk to. I feel like he's very easy to work with as well. We have constant communication back and forth through texting and such, always talking about different projects we're working on here at school, or I know we had conversations throughout the baseball season, and I'm sure we'll have more here throughout that basketball season. So he's that kind of person that I can rely on and know that if I have any questions, he'll be there to help.
Well, and so both of you will be the co-presidents. So we're not going to necessarily have a president and vice president. We're going to have co-presidents. We haven't really figured out how that's going to work exactly. But another reason that we did that too, Tyler, is that you're both, with your current schedule, you're both going to be looking to not only finish up your classwork, but your internships by summer. And since you kind of are both in a situation where you're going to be finishing at the same time, we've thought it best that, in 2020 that we go forward with two very experienced people. And I think that that's something that's going to be very valuable to the rest of the club because we've got such great leadership.
Yeah, I mean, we've had great leadership the entire time that I've been here. So I also have to give a shout out to Brian because I know following in his footsteps is going to be difficult because he's done such a fantastic job at helping the club out. So I think Christian and I will be good, but it's like you said, the opportunities that we've been given, we have to take advantage of them, and they are very helpful to us.
And we're coming up on a final edition of the the Fantasy Football Strategy Guide coming up as well. How's that been different than, obviously the Nightly News podcasts are a little bit more Central Penn based. What's it like to have that separate podcast out there? I mean, I know it's only monthly, but I still, and I love to do it. What are your impressions been thus far?
I love doing it, and I was very thankful when you guys asked me to come on and do it, just because we get to come on and talk about sports, and we all get to kind of give our different opinions about what we think is going on, and I think it's been a blast. That all of us that come in and do it, we all enjoy doing it, so we enjoy being around each other, and we really like what we're talking about, so it's been a lot of fun.
This will be the last question I have for you, Tyler, and then, of course, we'll have Christian on in just a bit to maybe ask him some of these same questions. So you have 3 more terms as the president of one of the biggest clubs on campus, one of the most well-known clubs on campus. Let's talk about some of the things that you foresee in the next 3 months, that whether it's certain events you'd like to do or certain initiatives you'd like to try to either tweak or improve upon. What are some of the things that you can see in your presidency, if you will, that you kind of really want to hit the ground running with in January?
Well, I think just kind of keep going what we've already done. Going into baseball season, making sure that we cover sports, making sure that students that we bring into the club have the same opportunities that I was presented with. It's kind of interesting when we heard Casey talk about social media. I always thought maybe it would be cool if we could get like a student run the school social media accounts for their sporting teams. So it's just small stuff like that. Like, I definitely think we have to make sure that whenever we bring new club members in, is that we have to let them get adjust and show them, hey, we're here to help you and let you have the same opportunities that we were given.
Well, and 2, not necessarily everybody that joins the club is into sports. And so what I think is, and this is the way I've always strived to run the club as an advisor, is to talk up to everybody specifically about what their desires are long term and try to find something within the club that works for them. Not everybody's interested in sports. Not everyone's goal is for you to, be a, ESPN or even on a local sports or something even like PCN, which Brian worked with. Not everybody's interested in that. Some people are interested in other things, and I think that's the one great thing that the club has done, whether it's Leslie with the CPC Film Series or Kim Musser working with the theater, really just kind of working closely with people who are trying to associate the things they're doing with the club to their goals. I think that's an important component that we really, really need to continue. Well, Tyler, I want to first congratulate you on your new position as co-president of the Nightly News Media Club during 2020, and I just continue to look forward to very strong leadership from you, and I continue looking forward to calling basketball for the rest of the season, and certainly baseball is only just a couple months away.
Yep, definitely be looking forward to that, and I just want to say thank you to guys like you and Brian for the opportunities that we've been given. It means a lot to me, especially being able to put it on a resume and, explain to future employers that we've had this opportunity, and I think it'll be great for me, so thanks very much.
Anytime, my friend. All right, well, that's going to be it with co-president Tyler Coleman. We will be right back with new co-president Christian Fulp. So stay tuned to the Nightly News Podcast. Welcome back to a special edition of the Nightly News Podcast. You just heard from our new president, Tyler Coleman, but we've got someone else here who would also like to chime in with some of the new president talk. As I mentioned in the previous podcast, we are going to have two co-presidents going forward. Brian Christiana does have one more term here, but he is going to be starting the hunt for his next career position, and Brian's done such a wonderful job here. He's been the president of the club for nearly 2 years. It's really quite impressive what he's done thus far. That being said, two people have really stepped up over the last year that have really shown us that it's important to kind of elevate both of them. So I think it would have been a disservice if we would have made one president over the other. They also work very well together. They work collaboratively, so I think that this is going to be great. And we have them through the end of the summer term. So obviously you just heard from Tyler. Here is our other new co-president at the beginning of 2020, Christian Fulp. Christian, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it's going very well. So one of the things that we really just wanted to come down and talk with you about is some of your goals for the club. You've been a part of the club for several years now. You've been key in our basketball broadcast. You've really, really done a spectacular job last year already. This year we've called a number of games, and we appreciate that. But it really is to your leadership inside the club and helping with initiatives, working hard on, with our fundraising and things like that. What does it mean to you to become the president? We certainly talked to you before about some of the aspects of why it's special for you to be a part of the club, but why is it special for you to become president of the Nightly News Media Club?
It's special to me because, well, at first, I wasn't involved in any clubs, so just to be a part of the club and just be with them for a year and almost 2 now, and just stepping up just means that I'm getting better and better, and me getting better and better means that I just want to spread my knowledge that I learned throughout my years at school and through the club, and I just could spread that with my peers and the other people that are part of clubs. And with Central Penn, I could branch out to more clubs as well because it's so small and everyone knows each other and everyone tends to work really well together. So it's just my impact on everybody within the club is just what's really special to me about becoming the president.
Now, obviously, one of the main contributions that you've had to the club is the sports broadcasting. And by no fault of your own, you're not able to call baseball because you're on the field. So we appreciate that. But beyond that, basketball last year was so much fun. We had such a great opportunity to see two amazing teams between the men's and women's teams. Of course, we're doing the same this year. Now, we have called some games this year, but as you look back to last year, what were some things that you took away and looked forward to again this year? What were some things you learned? What were some things that you took away from that experience?
Well, first, last year, I would think I was really shy behind the camera. You would think I would be shy if I was face on the camera and all that, but just broadcasting it from behind there, I was just some nerves. I was a little clammy, but this year, I definitely feel way more comfortable just stepping in, even with the podcast studio, just stepping in and going. It's just almost natural to me now, so I'm looking forward to having fun.
Well, it is unique in that where we are stationed. I mean, and I'm pretty sure people can understand this based on our pregame and our halftime and our postgame, but we are in the crowd. Mm-hmm. If you've ever watched Sunday Night Baseball, they did a few times with David Ross and A-Rod, that they were actually in the crowd calling the game. And it is an entirely different perspective. What is it like trying to call these games? And listen, I would say I'm pretty loud. Mm-hmm. Even I struggle to be loud enough when the crowd is on fire.
Yeah, so just being in the crowd, you're just amongst the crowd. They're going to get rowdy. They're going to be loud. So you just got to be loud with them. But at the same time, you got to be professional and just speak and stay focused on the game and just talk simply about that. Yeah, you want to cheer just like a fan, but you're doing it for the viewers. So.
And I got to tell you, just looking back, hundreds of views on these games. And it's, ideally, I would hope that we would be able to get a little bit more live, but what I think, there's a variety of different reasons why this is beneficial. Certainly, the fact people's parents can't be there. I mean, even you told me on a previous show that one of the coolest things, obviously your parents do come to many games, but even the ones they can't get to, literally all they need is to put on their phone. Now of course you can get YouTube on your televisions and your computer, but people can literally watch anywhere they are, and of course it's all on demand right after the game. So, but hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I love. I ran into new athletic director Casey Hicks recently, and she said that I crack her up, from my commentary, and of course I don't intend to, and of course we'll throw a couple subtle jabs at people like Brian, but it's fun. It does not feel like work. This is part of my job. This is part of what you've decided, the path that you've wanted to go down with the nightly news, because this is what your future hopefully holds. I guess that leads to another question. How are you going to be able to use this experience to build on your resume and portfolio? And maybe what is the next step for you 1 year from now?
Well, that's a good question. This has just helped me with experience all around, just because I'm being hands-on. I'm learning how to work a camera with the sports broadcasting. I'm also learning how to talk on camera. First and foremost, that's a big thing. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and just like expanding on a whole bunch of horizons. So it's just getting out there and getting my name out there as well, and just networking with my club and professors above me. So it's just getting out there right now. And within a year, hopefully I can start my internship in the summer, and just hopefully at a local news station, and I could just get my foot in the door and then build up from there.
One thing that I always like to ask, you've been such a hands-on member, not that Tyler hasn't, but, Tyler's kind of in a different situation in that he's not necessarily local, does make special trip down here for club events. You've really been a part of almost everything that we've done over the past couple of years. When you think back, what are some of the events that you'll always remember?
Oh, man, there's a lot. So we did Club Wars my freshman year. That I'll always remember that, because that was the only Club Wars I took part in. We were supposed to have one earlier this month, but it was postponed. Definitely announcing the broadcasting, sports broadcasting, opening up with that. The first time you did it was baseball, so I really wasn't even a part of it, but I appreciate it.
Of course you were a part of it. We had you on the show.
Yeah. There's just a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of memories with the nightly news, and it's just a great time. It's just, everything I did past 2-3 years is just essential and just great.
Well, I love some of the things that certainly I remember you being a part of is certainly our partnership with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah.
You've gone down there several times. And yes, of course, it is fun because you do get to go to the game and you get to grab a cheesesteak. Yeah, that's fun. But really the whole point is the networking with the people from the front office. I mean, I got to go down and I wasn't there as a chaperone. I let you guys are all adults, so I trust that you're going to be on your best behavior. But I got to go down because the Cubs were playing, and I also wanted to I got to meet their internship coordinator and got information about sending students down there. But I mean, that was just such a blast to be able to meet the front office people, to get to meet the players, to get to meet Mickey Morandini. I mean, it was such an adventure, and I just appreciate Christian, because if it wasn't for students like you, the club wouldn't exist. Yes, Professor Olympia and I really work hard on this in terms of the back end of it, but really it's about you guys, which kind of brings me to my final question. When you think about the future of this club, you're going to have 9 months to leave your mark on this club with Tyler. What are some of the things that you would like to see happen? And it could be, the biggest idea ever. It could be just something small. What would you like to see this direction in the next year be for the Nightly News Media Club?
Well, I just want to thank Brian Christiana, because he been an inspiration on me with the club. He just being behind him for the past 3 years just motivates me to just keep getting better and better. He leads by example and does that in a great way. With me taking over, with Tyler as well, I just want to keep expanding, just getting more people aware of our club and what we do. Just bringing more people in will make it everything better because more minds would just bring in more ideas and we could all collaborate and expand on that. So like I just want to get everybody, as much as people as we can, in and just see where everything goes from there.
One thing that I would love to talk with you about in a little bit more detail would definitely be a little bit, it's tough to continue expanding in terms of sports. But the one thing is that we've only ever done home games. I would be definitely open to do some away games if it makes sense for us.
Yeah.
Definitely in the case of baseball, I think that there's a little bit more opportunity there for us in terms of collaboration with other athletic directors. And not to say, in soccer and basketball there isn't either. But baseball we started there. I think that's where the next expansion comes. And frankly, I really hope that maybe this year we could do a couple of away games.
I definitely think that's an option because like, me personally, for being a Central Penn Knights baseball player for the past 3 years, I took time and I talked to the coaches on the other teams as well, like just to build a bond because I've been playing against them and their kids for the past couple of years. So just like I think they would be actually very ecstatic to just have the opportunity for them and have somebody else like a sports broadcasting crew come in and just live stream the games. It would be great. I think they would be down for it.
I think one of the most interesting things, this actually happened to me 2 or 3 different times when we were in the net. I had the opposing coach come up to me and say, what is it that you're doing? Because so with the camera that we use, it's stationary and obviously trust me, I would love to continue to improve the quality. I think that the quality is good. I think that we could improve it, and there are ways that we could going forward. But that being said, to the best of my knowledge, no one that we play does this. So in terms of the schools that we are, playing, I'm not seeing anything even close to this. So by that rationale, I've had a couple of different people, different coaches, come up to me and ask me what I was doing, and I'm happy to collaborate with them because it's not like we have something proprietary here, and it gives our students an opportunity to get some firsthand experience with I used to call baseball games back in the day. I've been a broadcaster for most of my life, so just hopefully in some small way that opportunity to work with me is helpful to you. So one final thing. Obviously you are, and you just mentioned, that you are in your final season as a senior on the Central Penn Knights men's baseball team. Now, we will have you and some others back on later on in this term to talk about the upcoming season. But what does this mean to you? Do you have some unfinished business?
Of course. I know that this could possibly be my last year ever playing baseball. I mean, of course, I could play some summer baseball, but like as collegiate-wise, is my last year to perform and show that I still got it. So just being out in the field and just realizing that I'm a senior now and I'm with the younger guys, it kind of blows my mind because I'm still a kid. Like I'm kind of still young and hip, so it's weird. Still 21 years old, but just all the experiences and just seeing the younger guys and working with them and just being able to spread my knowledge is just great. I'm ready to just go out there, have fun, and just really just have fun this year. Win and have fun. Two main things.
You're the Brian Christiana of the baseball team. But seriously, you don't ever really think about it till you're in it. And it's that people who are new look up to you. And when you said earlier about Brian leading by example, I've already talked to Brian about this. There were times early on in his presidency that he resembled being a 19-year-old young man. And that's no disrespect, but he grew into that position because he realized the importance of leading by example. I think that's going to be something that certainly you've done, but I think it's something you're going to catch yourself on. If you show up a couple of minutes late or something like that, you're going to tell yourself, what, I can't do this because if they think it's okay for me to do, then they're going to start doing the same thing, and that's how team chemistry erodes. So very well put. Well, Christian, thank you very much for being here, but really thank you very much for stepping into the big shoes that Brian has. But I think between you and Tyler, I think that you guys are going to do an amazing job over the next 9 months.
Thank you. I'm truly honored.
Of course. All right. Well, that's it for another episode of the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller for new Central Penn, co-president of the Nightly News Media Club, Christian Fulp. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we will catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.